introduce our fire chief. This is the CRD team. Mr. Nelson Chan. Chief Dunlop.
Chief Dunlop.
Hi, Kevin Lorette. Yes.
Ms. Iowa.
For the presentation of this training.
I spent the last 2 years as the general manager of integrated water services. And I've been with the CRD since 2006 and it's been roles. My background is in engineering background, I'm not an engineer, but that's what I'm also with my house on property. 8 years at university and local government.
Yeah, I'm always curious how people get to look at I guess you work for a company they spun that off in part of it. Yeah, it was a really great place. Yeah, I did work on the wastewater and water treatment side. So I tried to get to know the city.
Yeah, the other one.
Regional sales side, business development.
Okay, are we ready, everybody? Welcome, everybody. I want to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, including our neighbors, the Suk First Nation and the Shiano First Nation. I'd like to welcome you to the District of Metchosin Council meeting of May 15th. With that, I will ask for an agenda approval. We've got some pinks here, late breaking correspondence. We'll add them to 11B, C, and D. That's okay. And with that, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. I would like to welcome the CRD team to the Metchosin Council. They're actually going to many of the municipalities, the 13 municipalities, to give presentations. And I'll ask Mr. Robbins to come to the podium, and perhaps you could introduce your team.
Certainly. Mayor Little? This good here?
Yep.
Yeah, great.
Just right there. That's great.
Perfect. Thank you. So good evening, Mayor and Council and members of staff who are here this evening. My name is Ted Robbins. As Mayor Little said, I'm the Chief Administrative Officer of the Capital Regional District, and we really appreciate you welcoming us to your meeting tonight. Before I get to our presentation, I would like to introduce members of our executive leadership team who are also with me here tonight. So starting again, we have Nelson Chan, who's our General Manager of Finance and Technology. Nelson's also our Chief Financial Officer for the Capital Regional District. Next to Nelson, we have Kevin Lorette, our General Manager of Planning Protective Services, and Kristen Morley, who's our General Manager of Corporate Services, also our Corporate Officer, and Larissa Hutchison, who's the General Manager of Parks and Environmental Services with our organization. Ian Jesney, who's our Acting General Manager of Integrated Water Services, wasn't able to join us tonight, but otherwise we have the full team here, so we really appreciate the opportunity. And this for us is really an opportunity to introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about the work the CRD does within the Capital Region, and answer any questions you may have at the end. And of course, even after tonight, there's an opportunity to follow up with questions now that you know who to contact. But we know Most of you already have some familiarity with the work we do at the Capital Regional District. We know some of you, of course, are participants on our different committees and commissions. Of course, Mayor Little sits on the CRD board, but this is an opportunity to tell you a little bit more about our organization. And so with that, I'll get right to the presentation. So tonight, we're going to provide a bit of an overview on regional government and the role of the Capital Regional District here in Greater Victoria. We're going to provide a quick overview of CRD services and an overview of the financials for the Capital Regional District. We do have some slides that highlight some major projects that we are undertaking across our different departments. I know we won't have time to get to those highlights tonight, but certainly if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out. We thought we'd leave the slides here for you just for interest. So let's go ahead and get started. So what are regional districts anyways? Well, regional districts are an order of government established by letters patent back in 1966 in British Columbia. And as a result, we have quite a unique local government structure here in BC compared to the rest of Canada. Does anybody know how many regional districts there are in BC?
27, I think.
27, very good. Yes, there are 27 regional districts in the province of BC. And regional districts really arose out of a need for greater regional cooperation on regional and sub-regional issues, and an opportunity to provide service delivery at a regional or sub-regional level. And so today, regional districts really have three primary functions. So we do provide region-wide services, such as solid waste management, regional water supply, parks, regional planning, just to name a few. We also provide intermunicipal or sub-regional services that can be delivered more effectively and efficiently through a shared service delivery model. And that's really the beauty of regional districts is as municipalities, as partners and participants, you really can decide, aside from those mandated services, which services you would like to participate in at a sub-regional or local level. And as a result of that, your residents, our customers, really only pay for the services that they receive. And the third primary function is to act as the local government for the electoral areas in the regional districts. In our case, we have 3 electoral areas in the capital region, Salt Spring Island, the Southern Gulf Islands, and of course the Juan de Fuca electoral area out west. And so we are the local government for those unincorporated areas. We provide services directly to those communities at the local level. Just to give you a sense of where the Capital Regional District sits in the jurisdictional responsibilities, and this table is really intended to give you a sense of that. And when you look at this table the points I'll highlight, it's clear to understand why some members of the public really find it challenging to understand where the regional district sits and where the municipal responsibilities lie, and then of course on the other end where the senior government responsibilities lie at the provincial or federal level. So when we talk about parks, for example, of course there are municipal parks, there are regional parks that the Capital Regional District operates, there are local parks in the case of our electoral areas, and then of course there are provincial parks. And so again, just to highlight where there are some interesting jurisdictional divisions across the different service areas. Of course, the water and wastewater, again, municipalities operate municipal water and sewer systems in some cases. The CRD operates sub-regional sewer systems and water systems. But when it comes to the province is responsible for groundwater monitoring and groundwater licensing. So again, a bit of a split in responsibility there. And then finally with health, the CRD through the Capital Regional Hospital District partners with Island Health to deliver and improve healthcare facilities in the region and provide capital funding for healthcare infrastructure. But ultimately the province is responsible for public health and healthcare services. So again, just to highlight some of the interesting jurisdictional issues and again highlight why we understand it may be challenging for some folks to understand where the regional district role is in all this. Just for some context for the region, of course the Capital Regional District covers a large area, about 237 hectares to be exact. And the population of the district continues to grow. We currently sit at about 440,000 people within the Capital Regional District. So continued growth for sure. The Capital Regional District is comprised of 13 municipalities and 3 electoral areas, as I mentioned. And there are at least 18 nations who identified parts of the Capital Region as traditional territory, 11 of which have reserve lands or settlement areas within the Capital Regional District boundaries. And many of those nations receive services from the CRD either directly or through our municipal partners. The CRD is comprised of both rural and urban subregions and communities, and of course that creates some interesting dynamics, certainly at the board table. It also results in a very diverse and interesting region, which is what we love about it, but like I said, it certainly comes into play when there are decisions to be made at the board table. In terms of the governance and administrative structure of the CRD, the governing body is the CRD board, as you're probably aware, with 21 municipal directors and 3 directly elected electoral area directors, all of whom make up the 24-member Capital Regional District Board. And First Nations in the region do not participate at the board table. Only modern treaty First Nations have representation on regional district boards, such as the Tsawwassen First Nation in Metro Vancouver, where there is a seat at the Metro Vancouver board for the Tsawwassen Nation, but there are currently no modern treaty First Nations in the capital region, and so as a result, there are no nations represented at the board table at this time. And the board chair establishes standing committees of the board. We have 10 standing committees this year, and generally speaking, recommendations on policies and direction to staff come up through those standing committees to the board for final decision. And in addition to the standing committees, again, as mentioned earlier, there are over 70 committees and commissions. We know some of you participate on those and have in the past. Those 70 committees and commissions are really responsible for overseeing administration and operations of those regional, sub-regional, and local services. And as you also probably know, the CRD operates 3 corporate entities. As I mentioned earlier, the CRD board was incorporated and established in 1966. And that provided a service authority and mandate in letters patent for those regional district services. But the Capital Regional District also has the Capital Regional Hospital District, which was incorporated in 1967 by the way of a Hospital District Act to mandate the sharing of capital costs for regional health facilities. And the Hospital District Board was established shortly thereafter in 1974. And then finally, the Capital Region Housing Corporation was established, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the CRD with a mandate to develop and manage and deliver affordable housing across the capital region. And the same administrative structure exists for all 3 corporate entities. And there's a shot of the 2023 to 2026 CRD board, great looking bunch. Director Plant, who's a Sandwich councillor, is the current chair of the board. The board chair and vice chair are elected annually by the board. And of course, Mayor Little is the Metchosin director of the CRD board this term. The board also represents the Housing Corporation board and the Hospital District board, as I mentioned as well. For this term, the board has established 5 priority areas that are going to be the focus for the board this term. So you'll see them here: transportation, housing, climate action and environment, First Nations, and governance. You may see some similarity there with some of those priority areas from the previous board, and this board has certainly determined that there's a lot more work to do under those higher level priority headings, and that work is now represented in our corporate plan, which I'll just flip to next there. So that's a cover shot of our corporate plan. It is available on the CRD website. That was just published in April and approved by the board at that time, and that corporate plan really represents the work that we as an organization will deliver over the next 3.5 years now. Over this board's term, we have 134 separate actions and initiatives that we've identified in this plan that we will deliver to support the board's 5 priority areas. And on the organizational side, we've captured those priorities under what we're calling community needs, the 5 headings there on the right-hand side of the slide, which fall to the different departments and divisions within our organization. So I encourage you to go to the CRD website and look for the corporate plan and learn more about those 134 different initiatives that we plan to deliver over this term to support the 5 core priority areas. So with that, now I'm going to call up Nelson to provide the rest of the presentation on the services and financial overview. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Good evening, Council. Really happy to be here. It's funny, my daughter's favorite restaurant, she just had her birthday dinner at Metchosin Cafe. Loves the pizza and the ice cream. And my dogs love Blue Lagoon, so It's great to be, in familiar territory. It's so beautiful here too. So thank you very much for having us. Just really briefly on CRD services and financials. As Mr. Robbins had mentioned, the CRD provides over 200 services, 230 I believe was my last count. We split those up into regional, sub-regional, and local. As Mr. Robbins also mentioned, regional districts were created to deliver some of those local services for electoral areas. And that's the majority of the services that we deliver. The sub-regional services, which were also mentioned, are elective services that municipalities, electoral areas can participate in. It really speaks to some of the economies of scale or effectiveness to have regional or sub-regional consolidation and to deliver some of those services in a more cost-effective manner. And regional just being all participants across the region. So we had a little handout to go with the water bottles, something we like to call CRD on a page. It lists all of the jurisdictions on one axis and then the services down on the other one. I did exclude the local services. All 100 and something of them would have made it even harder to read than it is now. But when you look at it, it sort of gives you an idea, particularly in the sub-regional services, a little bit of the a la carte type services that we offer. Sometimes I say Swiss cheese, but really just to signify being able to participate in some of those services that are more cost effective, or services that you can't deliver individually, and sort of grouping with other municipalities to do that. Perhaps a little bit of an orientation on regional districts. Perhaps the most fundamental difference between municipalities and regional districts is we are required by legislation to manage services independently, financially. So it's really the only fair way to ensure that your suite of services is cost apportioned for the basket of services that you so choose. So as such, I do manage 230 sets of books for each one of those services, which is very different than municipalities that have general revenue that come in, and then you can allocate those to various services that are within your jurisdiction. For just an idea of scale and scope, our 2023 budget was recently approved. For the three entities, as Mr. Robbins had mentioned, on a consolidated basis, is close to $700 million. In the time that I've been with the CRD over the last 6 years, this number's fluctuated as high as just under $1 billion. Mostly driven by capital core area sewage treatment project as an example, but kind of floats in that $700–900 million range, give or take. I always like to say that no finance presentation would be complete without a really ugly table with lots of numbers that you can barely read. That's this one. We did our best to highlight Metchosin there in the bold. Really to say this is the requisition impact or property tax impact for CRD services. Metchosin will see an impact of roughly 3.5% per average household for this year. Really proud that the board, on a consolidated basis, we brought a budget in at 2.8%. Recognizing that CPI and inflation in Greater Victoria came in at about 7%. So I was really proud of the work across the organization to look at value-added activities and bring something in line with that. And you can see a little bit of variation as well, and that really speaks to the a la carte in and out of some of those sub-regional services that I had mentioned earlier, but certainly Metchosin fits there. If we do a little zoom in on Metchosin just really quickly, we did break it out between the CRD component itself, the hospital district, which Mr. Robbins had mentioned earlier, municipal debt. Metchosin has no debt, congratulations, but all debt is required to flow through the regional district. But on an average cost per household basis, folks in Metchosin will pay in about $460 to the CRD to deliver those suite of services for CRD on a page. That works out to about $1.26 per day. That's probably half a cup of coffee that I paid for this morning. So I personally think some great value to the services that CRD delivers. And you can see in the donut diagram there some of the major services that Metchosin participates in. With that, I'm happy to close that off. This part of the presentation, there's a number of slides there that highlight some of the major projects. We can certainly take any questions on that, but but certainly open to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you very much for both your presentations. Does anybody have any questions? This is our opportunity to ask questions of the executive team. Please. Hello.
Well, the only thing I will say is I'm very impressed with the fact that Mr. Chan manages 230 books. Having just gone through the budget for one book, I guess, it was quite arduous, so congratulations. And yeah, thanks for your work in keeping the budget down. So, or your sort of the tax increase from the CRD side down.
Great, thank you very much for that. Through the mayor, really a lot of hard work from folks across the organization. I know sometimes I get the pats on the back or the knife in the stomach, but certainly I think it's a great effort by the board, the oversight by the board to set bookends or guidelines for us as an organization, and just really happy to deliver that.
And maybe I could just also add this comment and questions around this come up from time to time when we're presenting the budget, and I just want to highlight that was that increase was really focused on the requisition. And as Nelson said, that's really a not only for Metchosin, but the consolidated view across the organization came in at 2.8%. But just want to note that, of course, we also have a number of fees and charges and rates, which are also determined through the various budgets associated with the different services. And particularly in those capital-intensive services like water utilities, for example, of course, Metchosin participates in the Juan de Fuca water distribution service, which has a fairly significant capital program. Sometimes those rates or fees or charges associated with different services, as is the case with the water rate, could come in at a higher percentage increase than 3.5%. But the same effort goes into managing those budgets and managing those rate increases across the organization, across the different services, over and above the actual requisition increase.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Councillor Gray.
Thanks so much. A very clear presentation, and I've seen a little bit of the action that the orientation of the CRD board that folks provided. Thanks so much for that. What happens if we want to join in an a la carte service? Is it a notice period to do that, or does it happen fairly quickly?
Go ahead.
Sure. Through the mayor, it would depend. I'd say in most cases, if you wanted to join a service, each service has a service establishing bylaw that sets out the participants of the service. Yeah. So if you want to join, we would do an amending bylaw to join you or to add you as a participant. Mm-hmm. And then we would need to go out to the other participants in the service and seek their approvals. There's a participant approval process. If we have 2/3 approval, then you would the bylaw would then come back and it would be adopted by the board.
Thanks. I'm interested in the stormwater management. We don't have sewers here, but we have a lot of interest in our watersheds. And I attended the intermunicipal working group a week or so ago, and so it was one of the questions that came up there about Metchosin's not participating, and so I'm interested in learning more about that.
Right.
Was there anything else off the a la carte menu that you were interested in?
Well, let me see. Nothing at the moment.
Okay. Any other questions? From the council table? Oh, okay. Fire Chief, did you have any questions?
I do, if I may.
Please come to the podium.
Thank you. This is great information to have. I'm just curious, through the mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry.
The 16% for other. What is captured in that? And do you want question 2 now, or do you want to wait for that? Okay. Question 2 is under the 5% for the fire dispatch. Will the new RMS system that will hopefully be here in the future, is that included in that figure, or is that going to be on top of that?
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Really appreciate the opportunity to clarify. So. We did not include it in the presentation, but it is something that we can send later. It is a public document as well within the approved budget. Each of the CFOs of all participants would have a copy of this, but there is something we call a budget summary or a requisition summary. So really, the purpose of the donut diagram here was trying to pull out all of the major contributors to the cost per household or the impact of the budget. The 16% for other would include a number of services that aren't included here. Things like community health, regional parks is on there, but climate action, goose management, planning services, call answer, CREST, animal care is on there. But there is a whole list. I would say, give or take, maybe 20 services that Metchosin participates in, but happy to distribute this public document to council again, if that's helpful.
Okay.
And the chief, of course.
Mr. Lorette.
Hello, through you, Mayor. I'll just answer the second question, which was we are updating the records management system with a new product called First Due. We did go out for acquisition on that, and we're doing the training and orientation. So that will get rolled out shortly, but that was built into the budget, built into the 5%.
Okay, great. Do you have a third question, Chief?
No, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Shukin.
So where are we at with this presentation right now? Are you going to go into major projects in a moment, or you're kind of just done right now? Question Q&A. Right?
Yeah, that's right, Q&A. We didn't, we were appreciative of the 15 minutes that we were provided.
Okay.
So we knew the major projects would take us well beyond that. Like I say, they're there for interest, and certainly follow up if you have any questions related to those projects. But if you'd like to ask us a question now, we can take that too.
For sure. Yeah. Okay, so I have two questions. The first is a bit of a speculative question. I may not have all the information right now, but my understanding is that picking invasive species in CRD regional parks has been put on hold for right now. And I know that because we have a number of groups, Friends of Devonian and the Metchosin Invasive Species Cooperative, who have been working with the CRD to go in and do broom and holly in particular, and some daphne. And as I understand it, that's on hold, which is really unfortunate because once broom takes a hold, it just thousands of seeds are deposited over the course of the season. So, but I was wondering if you could provide an update on that, and is there any way forward, particularly if we could work with the archaeologists and find a way of identifying sites that are low risk for ARC funds and moving it that way.
Yes, thank you very much, through the Mayor, and thank you very much for the question. I know at Devonian Park, we are working with the invasive species groups to just take a look at the flower heads and the cutting off plants. We're not doing any invasive, no pun intended, but we're not pulling plants out, because we need to do a much more thorough assessment of archaeological values in that park, and that's going to take some time, and we're working with First Nations there. So I know there's been some training lately with invasive species groups for chance find, but in Devonian Park in particular, I think we do have some incredibly special cultural values there that we want to protect. In Roche Cove and Matheson Lake, where we've recently been doing some management planning, training has also been provided there. We're doing some more assessments, but I think we'll be able to move forward with a stewardship agreement for those parks to be able to, I think there's some large holly and some other pieces there that we need to address with the volunteers.
Great. And again, I feel like there's a way you can do assessments of risk potential and cordon off those areas or be careful in those areas. But there's also areas of lower risk that I really believe we should try and get to as soon as possible. So.
Yeah, I can understand the need to get in there for invasive species. It's certainly a challenge. We have an archaeologist on staff now, which has been incredibly useful for us. Assessing cultural values is something when they're concerned about issues, we pull the First Nations as well, and we work with them to ensure that everybody's on the same page with regards to what those values are and how we can move forward, and that does take some time, so we need to balance those two things.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Second
Go ahead.
question is about bylaw enforcement and just some informational question. So I believe that it's only Highlands and Metchosin in terms of the municipalities that get bylaw enforcement services. Is that correct? What other?
Sandwich as well, yes.
Sandwich? Oh, okay,
Yes.
sorry. Didn't realize that.
So
Okay.
that was Highlands, Metchosin, and Saanich.
Yes, through you, Mayor. We do bylaw services for our electoral areas, plus we do them under contract for Saanich, Highlands, and Metchosin. That's correct.
Okay, great. Thanks, that's, yeah.
That's great. Okay, is there any more questions from the table or from staff? Anybody else have any questions? If not, sorry, Councillor Epp.
Thanks. Yeah, this is referring to the Galloping Goose Trail. We have a huge increase in the number of cyclists that are using that trail on a regular basis, especially on the weekends and in the better weather. And a lot of the crossings are quite dangerous because the riders are coming out of the trees and flying across these little side roads. Even though there's little stop signs and so on, they mostly are pretty much ignored. I know a couple of years ago I talked to someone about that, and the possibility of chicanes or just some more creative ways of slowing those cyclists down on the trail. I just wondered if anything was happening along that line.
Thank you very much for the question. And through the mayor, I just answered almost the same question at Suit Council earlier today. Speed on the regional trails and just the volume as well is really becoming quite problematic. We're certainly aware of that issue. We are increasing our service levels with regard some of these issues are certainly a safety hazard. The challenge with chicanes or bollards is that we do end up having issues with safety for cyclists. So when they run into those pieces of infrastructure, we end up getting some liability. So we need to balance all of these pieces. But I can say that electric bikes has certainly brought this issue to a whole other level, and it's something that we're aware of and we're addressing. I think trail etiquette is also something that we need to do more of in terms of educating all trail users about what's appropriate on the trails. So I appreciate the question, and we're certainly addressing it.
Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, or sorry, go ahead, Councillor Donaldson.
I'm thankful for that last comment. As an equestrian, there are a lot of cyclists that if you do move sideways to let them pass, they still go two abreast. So trail etiquette is really lacking for a number of years, not just because COVID brought out a lot of people, but I know that the trail seems to have gotten mowed wider. The surface is a little harder, so it's easier for cyclists to travel on it. But the sharing is just not there. There's a lot of people that are showing their kids how to ride bicycles, or they're out walking as families and that sort of thing. So not understanding or ignoring how to share a multi-use trail is really, really key. So yeah, an education program would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, would you feel comfortable taking a couple of respectful comments from our community members? Okay, does anybody in the community have any comments or questions? Go ahead, come to the mic, Patty.
Patty Whitehouse, 5311 Rocky Point Road. I have, thank you for the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I have both comments, appreciation and a constructive suggestion to make. For those of us who are interested in local government, this information is very helpful, and the communication with the different members responsible for different areas of jurisdiction are encouraging. Thank you very much for that. My constructive suggestion, Mr. Robbins, you came in and greeted council and staff and the mayor first, of course. You didn't even acknowledge the people who actually pay your salaries and pay the taxes, and who you referred to as the people who pay for the services. My constructive suggestion is to acknowledge the people who do come to the meetings and listen to you. Thank you.
Are there any other suggestions? One more. Thank you.
Yeah. Nicole, she can live on road resident. Thank you. That was an awesome presentation. The table was legible. I am just wondering about commercial dog walkers. Because in Metchosin we're seeing again a lot of sort of unregulated commercial dog walking, and it's really taking a toll on some of the trails. So I don't know if there's anything beyond just trying to monitor commercial dog walkers for permits, and make sure they have permits, or if there's any other, again, sort of creative approaches that might be taken.
Yes, thank you very much for the question, and through the mayor, certainly commercial dog walkers need to have a permit to operate their businesses within regional parks. We know that dogs under control or on leash where they need to be on leash is a key issue for many of our park users. CRD park rangers are aware of this. We try to achieve compliance through education. But we are able to issue tickets for those that are just not following the rules, so I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Okay, one more, and then we'll have to get on with the evening.
Do you need to say everything?
You identify
Sarah Anthony, 4290 Metchosin Road. Yeah, it's sort of partly the bike thing there. Do you guys only, sorry, I'm trying to think how to formulate this. So is it just the bike paths that you would be responsible for in Metchosin, or also bike lanes is also just the bike paths? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would be glad to see both. I did somebody like fly out of the Biodiversity goose, scared the crap out of me the other day. They were like, going the right speed and didn't hit him. The other thing I was wondering about is if you could tell us a little bit about what's going on with CRD housing. I hear from a lot of people who are on really long wait lists, and I'd just be curious to just a small synopsis of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So we didn't get much into the housing today. We do have the 51 buildings. There's about 2,000 units of affordable housing in the region. We house up to 4,000 tenants. We do go through wait lists when people are shortlisted on those. We go through the, unless they have special needs, then we'll go through a centralized access and assessment system, but typically we go through BC Housing's wait list, and so that's done by chronological order. So there's no preferential treatment to individuals. They put their applications in, and then they're assessed and awarded housing units based on chronological order.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I will say thank you very much to the executive team. It's great to have you in Metchosin. Thank you for making your way out here. And you're welcome to stay until 10 o'clock. But you can also take your leave. You're more than welcome. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you for the water bottle.
Thanks.
Okay, with that, we'll move to the public participation part of the meeting. So every speaker has 4 minutes to a maximum of 45 minutes, and please identify yourself with your name and your street. Anybody have any conversations? Respectful.
Respectfully. Hello everyone, Eric White, 4290 Metchosin Road. At our last council meeting, I let my passion get the best of me, and I said some things, but it was because I'm super passionate about poverty and housing, because the two go hand in hand. Without housing, more people fall into poverty. And the more our municipality drags its feet on coming up with some kind of solution to get people into houses, it's not just our municipality, it's all municipalities. We are facing a housing crisis. It is not just a problem, it's a crisis. It's a worldwide crisis. You know, other crises get immediate attention, but I find that this one isn't affecting people directly, so it's not getting as much attention. When I refer to poverty, what I was more referring to is not so much people living under bridges, but it's the single parents who are looking, do I have to pay more for taxes, and is that going to cost my kids their soccer cleats? Or am I Is my rent going to go up because my landlord's property taxes are going to go up? We have a large group of people, as we know, who will never attend these meetings because of the poverty they live in, and they live in hiding. They live in unacceptable, as we would call it, housing accommodations, secondary suites that aren't legal, tiny homes that are on people's properties that aren't legal, and the second they show up here and get asked, oh, where do you live? Well, they risk putting their house, and you'll never hear their ideas, you'll never get their input because of the way we have forced them to live underground. So I would hope that the council can start considering housing as more of a larger picture in assisting people get out of poverty. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those comments. And that's one of the reasons why we ask people to identify themselves and their street as opposed to their street address. But points well taken. Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak at public participation?
Sorry, Anthony, Metchosin Road. I saw there was a correspondence regarding the Young Agrarian program, and that looked really cool. I think that's a really helpful program. I mean, I don't think it solves all the problem, but I think it's really a good program right now to help young people get access to farmland. And I really, I think Robin's got a great idea there, and I think we should encourage that. But I do just want to add that part of the issue, of course, is you might be able to get access to that farmland, but housing is still going to be an issue. So, especially if you allow on ALR people to follow the ALR regulations, which, as I mentioned before, like is 90 square meters as opposed to 70 with the city, like that gives people a little more leeway. So just all these little things that are allowed on ALR land by the ALC might be really helpful to go a long way to getting farmers on that land. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. Nicole Shukin, Levon Road resident, and thanks for the opportunity to comment on just two items. Like Sarah, I want to just really affirm Robin Tunicliff's letter. I think it's a great draft letter. I would love to see it mailed out to the whole community. So I hope you'll consider that. The other thing by the planner, that the Beckingham Road application be forwarded to the advisory groups. I think that's on the agenda, right? Mm-hmm. And I just wonder if council could consider whether it might be premature to advance the application to the advisory committees. And I say that because I think there is a core weakness in the application, and that is the hydrology feasibility study, which is based on such outdated data, and is surrounded by cautionary footnotes that I've never seen the like of in a professional report. So I wonder if, I understand the developer's interest in expediting the process, and I actually think it might expedite it to explore with the planner the option of getting a second feasibility study done at the developer's expense. So based on up-to-date well data, this would be a great time of year for that to happen, May, June, when wells become precarious, well water does. And then, I say it might be actually more expeditious for the developers because there's a chance the application could be forwarded to me, let's say, and they'll just refer it back with the recommendation that there be updated well data. So I just think that is, for due diligence to be done, I think there has to be updated data on the water situation. That could be a real bargaining chip for council, which is why I think it's really important that we know the actual state of the wells. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no one else at the microphone, we'll move on. Thank you for that, everybody that participated. Moving to item number 4 on page 15 of your council package, the adoption of the minutes. Okay, first up we have the adoption of the minutes from the council meeting May 1st, 2023.
I'll move adoption.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Concerns, comments, questions? Not a call question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So second on page 19, the special council meeting of May 3rd. Take a motion. Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to the receipt of the minutes. This is on page 21 of your council agenda, page 21. This is the Finance Committee meeting. Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. I just wanted to say that in this particular meeting, we had the presentations for the grant and aid, and the next steps will be where we will decide on allocating or awarding who receives which funds for their requests, and that'll be at the June 5th meeting. So I'd ask for a motion to receive these minutes for this meeting.
So you're going to move that? Yep.
A motion to receive the minutes.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Comments? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, this the second is a motion to receive from the Community Planning Committee meeting of May 8th. Councillor Shukin.
I would simply move receipt of the Community Planning Committee meeting of May 2023.
Okay, moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Epp. Comments? No? Seeing none, call the question. Move receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. So moving on to the Environment and Natural Areas Committee. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'll move receipt of the Environment and Natural Areas Committee meeting minutes of May 8, 2023.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Comments? Knapweed, Biodiversity, UBCM, anybody? No? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then finally, the Public Works and Protective Service Committee meeting of May 8th. Councillor Epp.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Comments? No? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. So moving on to the Mayor's report. So as I mentioned previously, I have one written report and one verbal report. I have a few items on my verbal report. First of all, rise and report from our in-camera meeting. Mr. Chris Pratt has been appointed to the Healthy Community Advisory Select Committee. I thank Council for that appointment, and congratulations to Mr. Pratt. Secondly, and the fire chief isn't here, but that's okay. She made comment. We are, as you noted, with the intense heat, we're now launched into forest fire season. I'll have more of an update at the next council meeting, but Metchosin residents are reminded to try and conserve water, and that beach fires within the district are prohibited, and to be careful when you're burning, and to prepare in case of evacuation orders. So please follow the orders of the fire chief, and if an evacuation order is in place, which I'm not saying it will be, but if so, the provincial government asks that you abide by that. Okay, so thirdly, regarding today's agenda, we've got recommendations from the Community Planning Committee regarding the request for the development permit at 3667 Park Drive. We're discussing the Mild Zero Brewery as well, the storm management plan, recommendations from the Environment and Natural Services Areas Committee regarding biodiversity resolution, as well as stormwater infrastructure referral policy, a request to proceed with the referral process of the Beckingham Road subdivision, a reconsideration of an RFP process at the school, and the BC Energetic Step Code implementation program, and finally a request from the Agriculture Advisory Select Committee regarding an insert into our notices. So, and then finally, I just, on a little bit of a personal note, as many of you've heard, one of our community members has died Lisa Vogt passed away in April 4th, leaving behind her family, Fred, her daughters Erin and Alex. They've been in the community as a family since the early 80s. However, their history goes back much farther than that. Lisa's the daughter-in-law of our first mayor, Herman Vogt. She was a long-standing community member in Metchosin. She was a school teacher at our elementary school, so she had major impact on many kids, probably thousands of kids at Hans Helgeson, as well as impact on their parents. She was highly regarded. Children and parents loved her, and I think it's because she set up defined barriers and boundaries, and she was a superb teacher. As most of people in our community remember her, she was an extremely talented equestrian, but also she was a gymnast, and she had a lot of other talents as well. I met Lisa originally through the 4-H program. She came on board as one of the leaders of the Clover Buds program, along with Betty Hildreth in 2016 or 17 era, and she also was a leader of the Metchosin 4-H club. Sadly, Lisa was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer during the pandemic, and she really did well on chemotherapy and her therapy, and she took it very seriously. Personally, I've never seen anybody wield bales of hay while doing chemotherapy. She was really quite incredible. One of my fondest memories of Lisa was when I arrived for tea early one morning. I couldn't find her in the house, so I went, of course, to the barn, and at the back of the horse paddock, she was carrying a little baby bird. She was trying to figure out how to get this baby bird back into the bird's nest, and I said, Lisa, you're in your bedroom slippers, and she said, yeah, Fred knows about this. So anyway, she was quite a character, and we'll miss her. I will personally remember Lisa as a loyal friend to animals and lovers, and a fierce advocate of her family, especially her 2 daughters, which she is immensely proud of, Erin and Alex. And there will be a celebration of life for Lisa on June 3rd at her family home. Sorry for the tears, but she will be missed in this community. So thank you. And that concludes my mayor's report with tears. Okay. Business arising, page 37 of your agenda. Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I have 3 things to bring forward to council from the previous community planning committee meeting of May, and these are motions that the planning committee made at that meeting and bring forward for further consideration by council. So I'm just going to read them off here. So regarding the request for a development permit 3667 Parkway Drive or Park Drive, that council postpone a decision on a request for a development permit at 3667 Park Drive, pending further information from staff related to the rain garden and definitions around coefficient, and that staff coordinate a council site visit to the property, and further that information be brought back to an upcoming community planning committee meeting. So moved.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Gray. Discussion? Seeing none. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Great, thank you. The next one is in regards to Mile Zero, and this is a request to amend hours of the existing liquor license. So the motion is that council postpone a decision on the Mile Zero brewery request to amend hours of the existing liquor license until the next planning committee meeting, pending further clarification from the planner on the issue of whether rejecting the application, so option 3, puts it aside until the new application is made. So moved.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Questions? Comments? With that, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay.
Thank you. And the third one is in regards to the stormwater detention pond covenant on the Metchosin green space buffer. I'll make the motion. I have one really brief comment to make as well. So that council direct the interim CAO to communicate with the City of Langford's approving officer regarding questions around the servicing agreement, and that is in relation to the future of the stormwater detention covenant and who is responsible once the title begins to be shifted. So that's what we talked about last time. And that the interim CAO addressed issues with the city around indemnity and maintenance of stormwater works going forward, both during construction and after the sale of the lots. So
Okay, moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Epp. A comment.
thank you. I noticed that Mr. Gary Smurfett has addressed a number of questions to council and also to our interim CAO. Now, I don't have the answers to those questions tonight. I expect to have more information. There's a meeting later this week on stormwater covenant. But I would also like to connect further with our interim CAO in terms of the questions that we might be asking Langford in terms of the stormwater pond and also Lot D as well. So, and being informed where appropriate by Mr. Smurfett's questions. So.
Okay. Okay. So the motion on the table from Councillor Shukin. Do I have a second? Councillor Donaldson. Anybody have any comments regarding that? No.
I seconded it.
Oh, sorry. So that was moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Epp. Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed?
Thanks.
Carried. Okay. Thank you. And on page 39 of your council agenda, we have some business arising from the Environment and Natural Areas Committee recommendations of May 8th. Councillor Gray.
Thanks, Mayor Lillo. We've got two recommendations. The first one was on the spill response on the shoreline, and the motion that comes from the Environment and Natural Areas Committee is as follows: that council, in consultation with the fire chief, reach out to Sienna First Nation chief and council to have initial discussions regarding a shoreline management plan in the case of a spill response.
Okay, that's motion by Councillor Shukin, or sorry, Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Thank you. Comments? No. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the second item is a biodiversity resolution that we're hoping would go to the 2023 UBCM convention. When we last met, we talked about a couple of things here. One of them was the issue of how does one define biodiversity. And the way that, I think I referenced at our committee meeting that Sierra Club had been working on this resolution for municipalities to consider. And so I went back to them and asked them just that question, Mary Lowell, and the answer was the greatest biodiversity being the greatest variety of life forms within a given area be given the greatest opportunity to thrive. So really, in the way that you phrase the question, I guess the answer is everything. Living things.
Sorry, Councillor Gray, one more time that definition.
Yeah. Biodiversity is the greatest variety of life forms within a given area be given the greatest opportunity to thrive. The motion itself then is that council endorse, and when we adjusted the other point that was made during our meeting, and I think this was yours as well, Mayor Little, was the idea of we do best at AVIC, Association of Vancouver Island and Community, Coastal Communities, and at UBCM, if we have motions that are going to the province that are specific in terms of action. And I think when we looked at it last time, you correctly pointed out we were asked them to do something in general. So we tried to make things a bit more specific here. And so the whereases are the same as before, but then the resolution is therefore be it resolved that the province work with local governments and First Nations to support the protection and restoration of biological diversity in local communities by including by establishing a local natural areas protection fund and other measures, legislative and promotional, to support local efforts to acquire land for biodiversity and ecosystem health.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Gray, second on this motion to go to the resolution to the UBCM conference, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Discussion. Only thing I would say is I would just move the measures to legislative and promotional measures rather than the other way around.
Excuse me.
I would just say and other legislative and promotional measures. and strike out the word including.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Reports for action on page 41 of your council agenda. This is the infrastructure referral policy on major stormwater. This was put together by our interim chief administrative officer. Did you want to speak to this, Ms. Tarnowski?
Mayor Little, I don't have anything to add to that, just that it's this is just for approval, just particularly referring to primarily to the buffer.
Yep. So this is, just to reiterate what you said, that you don't have any further comments. This is in reference to the buffer land. So perhaps either Councillor Shukin or Councillor Donaldson want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Little. So just looking at the policy itself, there are basically 4 components to it. There's the directive to look at or turn major stormwater infrastructure approvals and the questions that they be referred to the advisory committees, particularly NIASC, PTASC, and the Agricultural Advisory Committee. So that's the main directive. Major stormwater is defined in a very rough way, but it leaves open the possibility of other projects other than the buffer land to be considered under this. But I believe that the definition is sound, and in terms of like the importance of stormwater infrastructure being located in the riparian area and the size. I mean that's in some ways it's a pretty rude and rough calculation of major, but it's a critical one as well. The one thing I will point out is many of us have been to the buffer land, and we know and have seen those temporary stormwater detention ponds. Those are roughly 20 meters square, I would say. So it covers stuff of that size. And the third component is some general guidelines that the advisory groups could look at in terms of their review of stormwater infrastructure applications that come to them. And sorry, there's one more, the fourth one. For the purpose of this policy, ditching, culvert replacement, and maintenance work done by staff is excluded from consideration. And that is a provision that allows for there not to be any delay on routine maintenance. Now, I will point out that I did have a resident contact me and had some concerns with Section 2.0 and whether it should be included. I'm going to maintain my support for that. I wouldn't want to have anything that is thrown at us that somehow causes unnecessary delay in work that district staff would otherwise do. So, but the main components of the policy are very specific to new applications. The buffer land, the stormwater infrastructure that may go in the buffer land would fall under this policy. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shukin. Councillor Gray?
I just had a couple of questions about, if you will, focus. So I took time I didn't get through the entire document, I have to admit, our existing rainwater management bylaw. And I wondered, is there some way to, or maybe not the intention, I think the intention here is this subdivision in Center Mountain is outside of Metchosin, so this rainwater management bylaw we have in place doesn't apply, seems to me. But are we meaning, maybe it's my question, are we meaning to overtake the existing bylaw in terms of all that? I mean, it's a very complicated process for approval already existing for subdivisions within Metchosin. And so it seemed to me that we're not wanting to replace that particularly, but rather augment it. Is that fair? And
yeah, well, one key consideration drives this policy, and it's the fact that things like, as I understand it, stormwater management plans will typically not be brought to the public or to council. Mm-hmm. They will be decided from administration. Mm-hmm. And so in this particular case, well, of course, the inspiration for this is the stormwater plan that will apply to the buffer land. And that is a unique situation because again, it is public land owned by Metchosin, and the infrastructure that would serve obviously a subdivision in Langford. So that's the driver for this. I mean, you raise an interesting point, Councillor Gray, in terms of where it fits in with the rainwater protection bylaw. But I don't see any inconsistencies in terms of what might happen once plans are brought to the advisory committees. They can refer to the rainwater protection bylaw, but yeah. So the one thing I would request approval of this policy today, and the reason for that is because we know we have the plan for the stormwater plan for Lot D in the residential is now with staff, and so I think it's expeditious for us to put something in play that allows us to be referred and be made public essentially. So
what you're saying is this is meant to augment our current policies and to make use of the expertise of the advisory committees.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question?
So maybe then it would be reasonable for the advisory committees in certain circumstances to refer back to the existing bylaw and say, hey, it's covered well, it's in hand here. But in another situation, I might say it's not covered at all, which I think would be the circumstance we're talking about now, if that was seen as being okay. Oh, Susan, Mr. Nesky has something there. I just one other point.
I would just like clarification to your point, Councillor Shukin, that staff asked a stormwater management plan. We do not have a stormwater management plan. We have a very draft report. So there's no detailed plan, it's just a very draft report of what is being proposed right now.
So just for clarification, you're talking about a very draft document on the buffer land?
Yes, yeah, it's just like, it's not detailed drawings or anything like that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that. And your final comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my last point was just looking it over again, Councillor Shukin, and I wondered 1E, so each of the one we're saying manage, such as minimizing, controlling, and then E is measuring, and I thought maybe we should alter that and say minimize turbidity in the presence of contaminants, or at least that's the goal, I guess. I'm okay if we leave it as, I just wanted to point that out, that there were active verbs except for that one, which was measuring, as opposed to the final point, which I think we want to minimize turbidity in the presence of contaminants. I'm okay either way, just wanted to put it out.
Yeah, I'm good with measure, and I mean that is the goal, of course, is to minimize stormwater, quality like turbidity and contaminants. The entire process of measuring and getting good data is a challenge unto itself, though. So
I'm happy with that. When I read it one last time last night, I thought, oh, wait a second. But I think the goals of certainly of MEASC will be to minimize turbidity and presence of contaminants right off the top.
Okay. Any other questions regarding this? So we have a motion on the table. No other comments or concerns? I'll call the question unless you have something else you'd like to add.
Do we have okay.
Oh, we don't have a motion, so you want to propose a motion?
Sure. I would move the adoption of subdivision stormwater infrastructure referral policy SU 100.40. So moved.
Second.
So moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Any more discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, on page 43, we have a staff report. This is the staff report on the rezoning application for 4696 Beckingham Road. Request to proceed with the referral process. Mr. Lasky, did you want to start us off?
I'm not going to go in detail as to the background of the report. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. But the purpose for bringing this request forward to council is so that we can send the application out to internal and external referrals, so that being our advisory committees, as well as the other agencies that will have be able to comment on the application. So the intention is that to have this referral made at this early stage of the application, so any changes that will have to be made to the application can be discussed with the applicant, and then the revised package and any additional information. We do have additional information that was just received on Friday. So all that information will be brought forward to committee meetings at a later date, as opposed to bringing forward information that may change down the road because the referral process hasn't been done yet. So that's the purpose of bringing this request in front of council.
Okay. Before you leave the microphone, I have one question. Other people may have other questions. Regarding the comments about the hydrology reports and the use of the outdated data, I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Sure. So the applicant's representative has indicated that they will be commissioning more study with using recent data. So that's what my reference to earlier is, we're coming back to the planning committee with more recent studies, as well as any referrals and comments and feedback we may receive from the referrals.
And then also the question that I had was regarding the open house. How is that information going to be collated, and will that be included in the package from the applicant?
Yes, so the applicant has collated all the information that was the comments that were received at the open house last week.
Okay. Anybody else at the table have any other questions regarding this? So this is, yeah, go ahead.
Through the chair, I wonder, Mr. Nerski, if we could have a sort of bit of information when this comes back to us, covering the question of what developments are permitted in riparian areas once things are signed off by a registered professional biologist. Just that question of what room is there for development activities to happen in a riparian area once they pass through that registered professional.
So I'll make sure to have that information included.
So
yes.
That would probably be from our planner?
Yeah, and it's not so specific to this application, but I think it's
riparian
important here. And I've struggled a little bit reading the legislation, and just a bit of Coles notes would be a help. Thank you. And I had one other question, which was, when we received letters from the community, we got one letter from Morgan Yates, and he mentioned the Metchosin Foundation might be helpful if this all proceeded to look at essential protection measures and who might be the right people to be involved in covenanting and endowment funding and estimate on that kind of thing. Would it be appropriate at this point to send this to the Metchosin Foundation to look at, or is that something that would come later?
I would suggest that would come later, because I'm just trying to think off the top of my head here. I'm just not sure how we're going to handle a deferral to the Metchosin Foundation, as given the fact that we've never done that up to this point. So definitely, we will have further discussion on that.
Okay. Well, maybe I can leave it to consider, just something.
Yeah, so I think that would be up to the Metchosin Foundation to offer those suggestions through a correspondence, rather than they're not an advisory committee, or they're a society of their own, so they would come forward with recommendations to the applicant and council. That's how I would think that would proceed. Councillor Shukin, were you finished, Councillor Gray?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Shukin.
Thanks. I would support the moving this to referrals of the advisory committees and also external agencies. As I remember in her report, one of the great points was I believe there was a list of a number of groups that were sent out for referral, and it's fairly significant, the number and scope. So I think that there's some learning that can be done by doing this. There was a resident who spoke earlier and mentioned that it might be premature, and I was wondering about that myself. But again, I think the time is right. The one thing I would just correct and clarify, what we're sending out for referral is the concept of a subdivision that will have piped water brought in. not the use of well water at this time. Now, if it goes to that, I think that's a deeper question that we maybe have to look at as a council, with the recognition that we can't get directly involved in a subdivision. But I share the view that the information and methodology that was used to generate that, the view that there was sufficient well water there, it just strikes me that is problematic based on what I saw that day. So that is another issue that I think we should address as we move along. But I'm supportive of moving this to referrals now.
Okay, and just to be clear, I think we're welcoming that additional information from their secondary assessment of the hydrology reports, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then other questions or comments? Okay. So, seeing none, the options for the council for consideration on page 44, if I could have somebody move that.
Sure.
The either one, whatever you're recommending.
I would recommend that council direct staff to proceed with referrals to internal and external agencies for the rezoning and OCP amendment application for 4696 Beckingham Road.
Okay. Just to be clear, this is just to move it along. We're not formalizing everything except for directing staff to proceed with the referrals. Okay, everybody's clear? Seconded by Councillor Donaldson. More discussion? No? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Tarnowski.
You can stay up here with 2 questions.
Okay.
From me, so.
Just give me a sec to get going here. Okay, the next is the staff report, consideration of the award of contract for the Metchosin School washroom and kitchen renovations, the RFP. Go ahead, Ms. Tarnowski.
So this report is to request the council rescind the motion that was given to award the RFP that was issued in April. So just after further consideration and risk assessment that we're requesting, staff is requesting that the RFP be cancelled, and it will be reposted very shortly for this project to proceed with a completion date of December 31st, 2023.
Okay, maybe stay at the microphone, and we have possibly some questions. Councillor Gray.
Should we make a motion?
Sure, we can have a motion, or we can discuss it first. Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion that council rescind its resolution of April 24, 2023 on the Metchosin School washrooms and kitchen renovation award in accordance with section 131 of the community charter.
Okay, so we'll just go by the wording there. Okay, that council reconsider the matter and that council rescind its resolution of April 24th. So that was moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Discussion. Councillor Shukin, followed by, Councillor Epp.
Mayor Little, through you, a question to Ms. Tarnowski. Is there any liability we face in cancelling or? No?
There's no liability because we reserve the right to do that, as stated clearly in the RFP. So, sorry, just with the caveat that provided we haven't actioned any items that we haven't. So we haven't awarded, obviously, the contract to any of the proponents.
Okay. Councillor Epp.
Well, just it's important to know that you did seek legal advice on this, and basically there was nothing wrong with the original RFP. There was just a couple of things that had to be added.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Questions? Okay, seeing none. So the original motion was from Councillor Gray, seconded by, who was it? I've forgotten already. Councillor Donaldson, sorry about that. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, you're still up there. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Husky. Okay, so on page 49 of your agenda package, this is the staff report regarding the BC Energy Step Code implementation.
So I have a crash course on the step code. So essentially this report is to inform council as of May 1st, 2023. It is now mandatory for step 3 efficiency of the backgrounds in the report for what's classified as Part 9 in the building code, and that's single-family dwellings, for improvement of 20% energy efficiency from the 2017 level. So that's for Part 9. As part of the mandate as well, it's mandated that Part 3 buildings, which are the more commercial office space and multi-level residence, which there's none in Metchosin, but we do have like a few commercials. So for that mandate for those type of buildings, there is a mandate for a 10% increase in energy efficiency for new builds only. So what that means to the municipality is there is no additional cost except with a little few changes that staff have implemented in terms of requesting the new requirements and also asking for the efficiency testing that has to be done. Staff have been trained on the step code. What will be coming forward is the building bylaw will need to ensure that all the step code requirements are incorporated in it. So we are in the process of conducting that review of the bylaw anyways to update the fees to be in accordance with what's being charged in the region. Our building fee bylaw is about 30 or over 30 years old, so the fees is a little bit updated. Yeah. So this is really just for information. Up until this point, it's been mandatory, voluntary. A lot of other municipalities have chosen to go that route. We're at the point now we don't have a choice, so we have to do it.
Okay. Okay, so comments regarding the energy conservation, reduction in greenhouse gas emissions step code implementation. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Tarnowski? Go ahead, Councillor Gray.
Well, it seems to me we should bring forward this motion tonight. But I was hoping that, I was in conversation earlier today with Alison Leduc about just the whole question of step codes. We talked about it a little bit during our climate action plan session. And so I did have a question, Ms. Tarnowski, if we pass this tonight, would it be possible to get a short staff report just on what the possibilities are to go a little bit further?
Absolutely.
And I guess what I'm thinking is that, you know, it's the level of work, the training that may be required, sort of the trouble that there may be opposite. Well, we don't have that many more new buildings to have built in Metchosin. But just some notion of whether, some advice really on whether we should go further, I guess is my question.
Okay.
So if I can just add to Councillor Gray's point, is that I forgot to mention that the fact that this is our is all municipalities' commitment and the province as well, Clean BC's initiative of achieving net zero by 2035, I think. But I'm happy to bring back a report on the options that for Council's consideration if we want to go beyond the mandatory step 3 and step 1 increased efficiency.
Okay. Go ahead. You have a second question? No.
Happy to move the motion if you like.
Yeah, just a moment. I just wanted to ask, would it be, would there be merit to having our building inspector come and explain any of this to us, or would that not be helpful?
He's explained all that to me in this report here, plus more. I got additional information from our other contract building inspectors as well, so it was a crash course.
Okay. Councillor Epp.
So do you need this moved tonight because of the May 1st deadline, and then bring back a report?
Yes, I will need that move is primarily because we need to amend the building bylaw. So to make sure that all these new the minimum step requirements anyways are incorporated in that.
Okay. Well, I will move option 1, that council directs staff to bring forward a building bylaw amendment to require compliance with BC Energy Step Code.
Councillor Gray, did you want to second that? Did you want us to do? Yeah.
Second.
So that was moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Gray. Any other comments? Councillor Shuken.
Basic question on the building bylaw. What do we think our timelines are for having this appear before council, or will you run it through a committee first?
The plan is to bring it front council.
Okay.
So the bylaw itself is almost done, completed. So I would estimate probably no longer than next 2 months or sooner.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Janowski. Reports for information. On page 53 of your agenda package, we have the Metchosin Building Inspection Department permit revenue year to date, as we usually see. Has anybody got any questions? If not, I will take a motion to receive this. You can see that there's not a lot of revenue in terms of this. I think we should look at in the future looking at increasing the permits, the fees for the permits. Okay, so with that, I'll take a motion to receive this Building Inspection Department report.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then we have the District of Metchosin Public Communication Report statistics on bylaw enforcement, land use, and miscellaneous in particular, as well as the other categories.
I'm not sure if we can answer the question. I was wondering about, through the chair, 1A roads, year to date 32 compared to last year at 17. Is there something that might explain that?
I think the snow, but I'll ask Ms. Tarnowski. On page 55, 1A, we have year to date 32 as opposed to last year to date was 17. Was that the snow?
I can't say for certain. I'll have to look into that for the accurate information.
Thank you.
Thank you. I suspect it was, but I'm not sure. Okay, any other concerns, comments, questions are always welcome. Okay, I'll take a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. And correspondence. Okay, so this is an interesting one. We've got, this is on page 57 of your council package, memo from the chair of the Agriculture Advisory Select Committee, Robin Tunnicliffe, with a couple of recommendations for council. Councillor Donaldson, you were on the you were at the agriculture meeting when this was brought forward. Did you want to speak to this?
Sure. Ms. Tunnicliffe has, well, the whole group has been talking about the celebration of this year being the 50th year for the agricultural land reserve and the purpose of that and what it means. And so I just want to read a little bit of what she's quoted here, is that 50 years ago, British Columbians had the vision to protect our province's food security by establishing the agricultural land reserve, and it has never been more important than it is today. We depend on the ALR for the food on our tables, and we depend on it to support farming families and businesses and communities all over the province. The ALR was formed in 1973 by people who saw the need and the value of preserving farmland for food production. That need hasn't changed. Today's farmers use the land differently than the generations before them did. They have technology at their fingertips and manage their farms from phones and fields. The importance of preserving farmland so future generations can enjoy fresh and local ingredients remains as true today as it was 50 years ago. In the second letter, I guess it is, that she's had here, she's asked if, I'm not sure where it is. She's asked if there can be a letter put into people's tax notices who actually live on ALR land. And I actually had thought that it would be more beneficial for all taxpayers to receive the same notice or a version of what she's asking here, because I think it's good information for residents in Metchosin to understand. She's also referred to the young agrarians. when I was at the ADICC conference about a month ago now, I sat in on the session of the young agrarians, and it's a very interesting program. We do have some young people that have been matched up to landowners here. There is quite a process to go through. It's not just a matter of finding people and putting them together. There actually is a screening process to go through. So I think that there are people that may be interested, and so not just people that are on ALR land, but I mean, I don't have AR land and we farm, and there are a lot of people that would like to have an arrangement like that, and could be beneficial for them, learning from the young agrarians who maybe have a little bit more energy, but you know, a food swap, that sort of thing. So I think this would be very valuable for all residents to receive this kind of information. I know Robin will be meeting with our interim CAO and myself tomorrow afternoon, and I would like to discuss that further, but I certainly would like to support the Ag Committee in this venture.
Okay, so would you like to put your motion forward to change it to dear property owner, comma?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, dear property owner, comma, regarding the agricultural land reserve.
Okay, with the AASC defined in the first, yeah. Okay, so this, we will have a discussion afterwards. This is moved by Councillor Donaldson to forward this to property owners. Do I have a second for this?
A second for discussion.
Okay, second by Councillor Shukin for discussion. I was wondering if we could get comment from our interim CAO regarding the capacity of staff to be able to do this. I think it's important to see if this is realistic and if the timing is okay.
So thank you, Mayor Lidl. So the timing is pretty much impossible because our tax notices have to go up by the end of the month. So all the arrangements have been made before the printing, stuffing, all those things for the tax notices to go at the end of the month. So that's the logistic piece of it.
So did you say impossible or possible?
Pretty much impossible because we're 2 weeks out of the tax notice is actually going out the door, like not just leaving the office here. It gets outsourced for stuffing, folding and stuffing, and then it gets mailed out. It's going out by the end of the month, which is 2 weeks away.
Okay. Okay, so it looks as if it will be impossible. They've actually asked this other times, past councils. What I would suggest is, seeing that it's impractical, that we withdraw the motion, but put it as a tag in here so that we can readdress it next February or so before we start, or during the budget process.
I was going to suggest that perhaps we defer this until we review the strategic plan, because this will have great implication for not just our finances, but not just the agriculture aspect, but our finances as well. So if I could suggest we defer that to a discussion or review of the strategic plan in the fall.
In November? Okay, would that be okay if you put that as a flag when we're talking about the strategic plan?
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, is everybody happy with that? Okay, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I just want to say that I do support though activities like this, that we can get connecting young agrarians to landowners. I think it's a terrific idea. I was going to suggest, we put it out in a newsletter. We have a few other items I think that might be worth communicating more formally, but so timing maybe is an issue there. I'm not sure, but perhaps it's better at the strategic plan time. I'm good with either, but I'm hearing Councillor Donaldson and Mayor Little that let's not lose the thread here. It's an interesting idea.
We used to, in past councils, put out a newsletter once a year, the independent of the property assessments for the tax notice. So that is an option. I think there was a budget item, a line item as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, yes, there was.
Yeah.
And we used to actually do it about quarterly, because I think that was Councillor McNair had started that quite a few years ago.
Okay, so we could add that and perhaps some other significant issues as well.
Yeah, and maybe when it comes to strategic plan, that would be the time to do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I can make the suggestion that piece of information about the Young Agrarian, we could post that on our website, just for information as to where to go to obtain additional information.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing that we're working on are, this group has been meeting so much, it's amazing how much energy they all of a sudden have. And they're very grateful for having the agricultural plan approved in the budget. But they will be putting more articles into the news as well. So I'm hoping that if this doesn't work here, then we're going to move this forward so that it still reaches the residents.
Okay, that's great. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, Councillor Shukin then.
It could also go on the website.
Say that again.
It could also go on the website.
You mean the letter?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could, actually.
Depending if we want to discuss it.
But maybe later.
Let's leave it until we talk about it at the strategic planning exercise. Everybody can give it some more thought. I'm just wondering, procedure-wise, if we can get some advice from Ms. Hanson regarding process, since we have a motion on the table. Can Councillor Donaldson revoke her motion? Or what would you like?
It's probably better to vote on it and just let it.
Okay, we'll let it lie. So I'm going to ask you to vote on the resolution to adopt this letter and send it out. Okay, you understand what we're voting on? Okay, so all in favor? All opposed? All opposed? Were you in favor?
No, opposed.
Okay. So all opposed. Motion defeated. Thank you for the guidance, Ms. Hanson. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Mayor Little.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, if you're looking for an article, you might go back to last year's Metchosin News, maybe it was in May, and there's an article on young agrarians by a certain Jay Shukin interviewing a certain Robin Tunnicliffe. So I'll during that.
Okay, there you go. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay, on page 63, we have, before we get to the bylaws, we have correspondence for information. This is a letter on page 61 from Alison Leduc, president of the Bilston Watershed Bilston Watershed Habitat Protection Association. This is a letter for correspondence. Does anybody want to comment on it?
I can say thanks for.
Yeah, of course we want to say thank you for the correspondence, but besides
thank you. I will thank the Bilston Association for their considered thought on this matter, and we have indeed passed the policy. That is the goal, is to bring some light to the plan. I think our engineer Al is going to be very diligent in his review of this. I should also mention that I had a call this afternoon from the engineer on the other side who's working on the plan.
Oh, great.
Who affirmed to me that they're keeping considerations around climate change as part of the plan. They're very well aware of their obligations under the buffer. They talked about trying to, not under the buffer, but under the covenant that's on the buffer. They also talked about looking at summertime creek flows as well. So, and that was, I talked to another person with the Bilston Association who was quite excited about that potential. So, again, we'll, I think there'll be much more information about the plan, but those are some of the goals that we are after for sure.
Okay.
So as articulated by Alison.
Okay, this is progress. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, with that, thank you for the correspondence. Okay, we've got some bylaws here. On page 63 of the agenda, we have the staff report, the Growing Communities Reserve Fund bylaw. number 685, 2023. The ask is that council consider adoption of the bylaw 685. So this is the Growing Communities Fund that we received from the province, 2.4 million. By obligation, we are to put it in a special reserve fund by itself. We've got obligations associated with that. We can add to it, but we can't take it and move it to other reserves in particular. So what say thee? Councillor Gray.
I move that council adopt the Growing Communities Reserve Fund bylaw number 685,
Okay.
2023.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Comments? We did discuss this before. Okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. No. Okay. Okay, there's no other business. We have time for question period, if we haven't already tired you out. Does anybody have any questions? Please come to the microphone. Yeah. Could you state your name and the road, please?
Yeah, Ann Schubert, 3734 Duke Road. And I just wanted to get some clarity on the making sure that the water bylaw, the wastewater bylaw, will still be intact and there's no changes to that. But this policy is specific to bufferland. And is it also applicable to other types of lands that might be like the bufferland? Or would the bylaw supersede that?
Councillor Shukin, do you feel comfortable answering the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Okay, so the policy won't supersede the bylaw. The policy is simply to refer stormwater management plans for major infrastructure to the advisory group. So it will not supersede the bylaw.
Perfect.
Yes.
So the bylaw will be intact. Nothing will change in that respect.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is really just to address the bigger
infrastructure that is proposed.
Right.
So the one seemingly before us is the buffer land, but it could apply elsewhere. Yeah.
Sure.
But again, it's major, so it's unlikely that small subdivisions, which I understand you're near one, likely would not apply. I would say, but hard to say.
Yeah. So the wastewater bylaw would address anything that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, no changes to the bylaw, and I'll just confirm that through you, Mary Lou, with Ms. Tarnowski. I can't see how it'd be otherwise, but
That's correct. So it's the rainwater management bylaw.
Right. Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
So, Alison Leduc, Darien Place. I just wanted to mention a little bit more about the conversation about the building codes, because the province did give the option to the municipalities on May the 1st as well, that you could go for a more sort of, not aggressive, but ambitious change to the building, and you could go to actually a zero carbon, with notice, of course, and Saanich and Victoria have both voted to go with a zero carbon step code for 2025, and I think Central Saanich is considering it, as is View Royal. I'm not sure if it's been presented yet to all of them. I think Oak Bay may be also considering it. So there are options for going, because the step 3 is only 20% better than 2018 is my understanding, and so there are options to, it's not just the net zero or the zero carbon option. There are other sort of step up and step down options within the code. So several options that you could consider for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So instead of waiting till net zero at 2032, they're saying that you can implement that effective right away, and other communities have done it as effective 2025.
Yes, that's my understanding, and other communities are considering it, and so there would be sort of model bylaws that we could follow if that was consideration.
Okay, something to consider when we bring this back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing that there's one more question.
One more question. Patty Whitehouse, 5311 White Road. Anything on the, from TELUS regarding the lack of cell service since the new towers come up?
No, but I can tell you that we have some meetings scheduled, I don't know when, with both TELUS and Rogers, and we'll have more information in the near future.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no other questions. I will take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor F, second by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you coming.